I swear it must be in my blood because I have always wanted to write. And when I was a kid, I would actually write books and send them off to publishers. It was like something I would do for fun. I'm a former newspaper journalist. I worked for the Baltimore Sun, among many other papers, and I loved doing research. I would always do, lengthy features or investigative pieces before the Sun. And so I really wanted to start blending my reporting in with the writing. And for the locked ward, I remember thinking this every book has a different origin story, but this book began when I started thinking, what is a setting I really haven't seen a book done in recently well? And then at the same time, Hinckley was in the headlines, who, was the most famous prisoner at St. Elizabeth's after he shot Ronald Reagan. And the two kind of converged, and I thought, oh, I wonder what it's like at a place like St. Elizabeth's, where it's not a place for people who, have more common mental health struggles. This is where mental illness intersects with danger, right? It's the people who are doing violent things, and they're kept in very different places. So I began trying to find a way in to a locked ward, and it was very difficult. But I finally found somebody in another city who said, if you fly to my city, I will get you in. And I was like, okay. And I bought a ticket, and later I thought she could actually be the murderer, because she's picking me up at the airport and I've never met her. But she was great. And the next day she said, okay, I want you to wear plain colors, no lettering on your clothing, nothing bright. Take off your necklace, because last week we had a PhD student studying deviant behavior and they came in with a lanyard and somebody tried to kill her. Um, don't maintain eye contact, but don't show fear. And, there was a long list of things I had to do to be safe. And I had escorts with me on the locked ward. The nurses are almost exclusively male, big, fit, and young. And we went in, and I got to spend some time there and see things. There were a few patients I interacted with, not deliberately, but one saw me and tried to get to me. And I was behind plexiglass at the time in the nursing station, because the nursing station has to be secure and it's covered by a very thick layer of plexiglass. And this man began banging on the window and trying to get to me. And I said, what does he want from me? After I, didn't maintain eye contact, but didn't show fear, I just kind of met his eyes for a minute and turned. And they said, he might have thought you were the devil. He might have thought you were an angel, his best friend, the woman who killed, his best, you don't know what he thought, but he was trying to get to you. So I came out of there and I just thought I was in a different atmosphere. It was eerie because of the things these people have done and the stories I've heard about what they've done. And there was everything there. And I went to my hotel and began to write, and that turned into the locked ward. Different world, right? Or like the world tips on its axis, when you're in there. And yeah, it I think that as writers, like, we have to be able to feel what our characters are going through. I've heard actors say this, like, you have to be able to access the emotions in some way. It may not be in the exact way that your characters are feeling it, but you have to be able to access the feeling of being trapped or helpless or whatever it is. And you think about a time in your life you might have felt that way and channeled that. So I do tend to get emotional when I'm writing, like I almost always cry when I'm writing the end of a book. I, can be a little darker, maybe, very distracted. People will say things to me like three times and I don't hear them because I'm so in the world of the book. And physically coming out of the world of the book, closing my laptop, you sort of blink and you look around and you've just been in another realm for however long you've been writing. And one part of your brain is always in that realm when you're writing a book, and you look around and it is it is surreal. It's hard to explain. Maybe the best um analogy would be like if you go see a movie in an old school theater, and you're in there, and you know how you like the movie finishes and you walk outside and you're like, whoa, it's daylight. Like, how is it still daylight? And you're a little disoriented. That's what it's like when you're writing, especially when you're writing something very intense. Yes,
Circumstance.
absolutely. So Georgia and Amanda are sisters, but they were separated at birth and adopted into different families. And for reasons that become later clear in the book, they were not told about each other's existence. Georgia grew up very privileged, very wealthy North Carolina family. She had everything. As she says, she went to the boarding school and, the country club, and she's in her 30s now, and she's very beautiful and she's successful in her own right. But as Mandy says, Mandy grew up very differently, blue collar family, no money. Her parents owned a bar, but Mandy said, I had all the advantages. Georgia might have had all the advantages, but I was the lucky one because my parents loved me. Georgia's parents did not love her. So the story begins when Mandy gets a call from Georgia's lawyer. And Georgia has been taken to a locked ward after killing her other sister, or being accused of killing her other sister. And she wants to see Mandy. Mandy comes in and Georgia says to her, I didn't do it. And if you don't get me out of here, they're going to kill you. So Mandy's learning, I've got this sister that I never knew about. Georgia knew about it. Mandy didn't. And, she's in this place, and who do I trust? Or is she drawing me into another web? The family was this entity, Georgia's family. And anybody who's been, the black sheep or whatever it is in their family knows that that is really destabilizing when you feel like, oh my gosh, my parents don't love me. They prefer their other child. They, wish they'd never had me or adopted me or whatever it was, in Georgia's case, adopted. And so she was really ostracized growing up. And the family felt she was very jealous of the other daughter who was seemingly perfect. And so when the other daughter was murdered, and Georgia was there, Georgia was the most likely suspect. She apparently had a history of doing things to her sister. But it was really tough for her because given that her family was so against her, and especially now that they've, their golden child is gone and she's all that's left and she might have done it, they really turned their backs on her. And so Georgia was very alone. And I think, you know, families are so complicated, in books and in real life. And a lot of times, you have to figure out, where's the safe place in my family? And is it with my family of origin, or is it with a family that I'm going to create on my own with a partner and kids, or with a partner, or just with friends?